We've been speaking quite a lot recently about what it is to embody and live this. And what's coming forward is to remember what this is that we are here to embody and live, right? Because if we don't remember on the deepest resonant level of truth, light wisdom, what it is that we are here to embody and bring to the surface of life, then we can get lost back in the mind and identity. And even if life feels like, well, life feels pretty good, actually. And in a way, that thirst, that quest for freedom, that real deep seeker impulse isn't strong like it maybe once was. And that's good, that's wonderful, that's glorious, right? But to stay connected deeply to what this is essential, because this is freedom. This is reality, right? So it's very, very easy for identity to come in and create a new identity, like a spiritual identity. It's very easy for identity, which is an innocent protective mechanism, to come in and create identity. And in a way, nothing at all is more important than knowing the deep, silent, still reality, which is the field of transcendence, the field of transcendent presence. It can be a little trendy in spiritual circles these days to get into the ideas of not wanting to transcend. It's not the transcendent, it's the whole. And it's very interesting how ideas can become kind of very popular, but the true transmission of grace has always been holistic, right? People saying, oh, it's not the transcendent teaching that, some of those saints and sages were talking about. Well, actually, it is. It is exactly what the saints and sages were talking about. It's just that it's been misinterpreted. But from my experience, when I look at the teachings of the great ones, I see and receive an invitation for a whole, fully embodied living of this truth. I don't see an invitation to transcend and get away from life or get away from the world. That's been an interpretation through the more modern interpretations of non-duality. The true non-dual teaching, is the teaching of one. And it's the same teaching that Yeshua was bringing forward. It's the same teaching that every great being has brought forward. And yet, so many of these transmissions, let's say, instead of teaching, so many of these transmissions of truth have been interpreted by minds that are not open to that full reality, so don't necessarily have the capacity. And let's also say, within a time of imbalance, that it's so easy for discordance and misinterpretation to happen. And that's why it's so important not to take anything from the external as a truth, but let anything in your field point you into the revelation of your own heart. Let this be an inner exploration where you make that exploration and inquiry inside you until, and when I say inside you, I mean in the landscape of your consciousness, until you come to a living reality that's unquestionable and that you don't need validation from the external to confirm. And let's pause here for a moment because what I can feel in the field here is that is the is the racehorse of the mind that wants to be first to the finish post, says, oh, I've got to get away from the teacher so that I can confirm this for myself, and then and live in a sovereignty, autonomy, and then I'll get there, and then I'll be there. Not so. That's where you have to watch for the identity of the racehorse of the mind that wants to be first to the finish post, that imagines that there's one that could be first to the finish post, right? So sneaky is the mind. So sneaky is the mind. And what is here present in our field this morning is that as long as we are being led by the mind, we will never be in the fullness of the freedom that we are longing for, the freedom that our heart already knows, right? So we're not in a process of learning something. We're not in a process of giving our power away. We're not in a process of embodying something. We're in the living, alive, let's wait for the right word. We're in the living, alive transmission field of reality, and we are the integrated life. We are life, right? We're not someone that is trying to work it out, get it right. We are life living itself, right? So as these words come, it's never to try to understand with the mind. It's just to receive the frequencies of the transmission field that are activating your intelligence, the wisdom light of your own consciousness and knowing, and just to receive what gets activated, what comes alive in your heart, what do you realize as the sharing comes forward, right? That's the really important thing. That's the invitation, is to find out what is alive in your heart. This isn't about getting somewhere. Let's just lay that down right now at the feet of life, the feet of this moment. But have you noticed how life hasn't arrived at the final goal, right? Life isn't in the process of trying to arrive at a final goal. Life is living itself. It's a constant flow of surrender, a constant flow of devotion. There's nowhere to get to. There's no finishing post. There's no end, just like there's no beginning. This is an eternal, infinite living process of life. This is the fullness of life living itself, right? So the process of life living itself is about us coming to the field of presence, the awake field of presence, the wake field of aliveness. The stillness, the silence, and dropping into that which is not moving and changing, and receiving the transmission of our own presence. As we receive the transmission of our own presence, we drop deeper into being the presence. It's like we might start off feeling like I'm someone that's dropping into presence. But as we rest in presence, we discover that I am presence. This is the true nature, is that I am this presence. And it's not an understanding of the mind. It's not an understanding in the usual way. It's a coming alive of the intelligence. So that's why we speak of the stillness, the silence, and the presence. But we also speak of the aliveness, because the aliveness is the dynamism, the alive knowing that is awake to itself, like consciousness awake to itself, is awake to itself, knowing itself. And yet the deep silent, still presence is never, ever moving, never changing. It's a constant, right? And so the invitation isn't to be looking for something or for an experience. It's to be here, just to be here. To be here and in the field of presence, presence itself is naturally present to itself, is awake to itself. Consciousness is awake to itself. And just here, in the resting, as we drop deeper into the consciousness than the mind consciousness or the body consciousness, which is where we're used to identifying, we drop deeper into the stillness, into the silence. And no matter how many times we have dropped in here, what you can be sure of it is if the mind is not involved, never ever gets old. It never comes to a place of, yeah, I know this, I've done this, this is old news. Never, never. It's always fresh, always alive, always glorious, because every time that we drop in to the field, the revelation is here. And the revelation is an eternal, infinite, unbounded revelation that's ever fresh. And it's always a wow, always a wow. Always a wow. Whether there's a dropping in and it's a sense of, oh yeah, old friend, here I am, here I am. Or a dropping in and a sense of, oh yeah, I've been away, I'm back, right? Or whether the sense of dropping in is just a total naturalness of what is already here and already being lived. It's always a wow, because there's such a deep, all-encompassing, all-inclusive frequency here. We could call that frequency love, openness, peace. We could call it bliss or light. The words don't really matter. And what's important is that we come underneath the words to receive the transmission frequency that's where the words are coming from, and in a way where the words are going to. It's here right now in this moment where the what is speaking and what is listening is the same. We're joined in one field where what is speaking and what is listening is the same. We just open in the presence, where the presence is present to itself, and there's just presence. And here, the discovery that, well, what I am is the presence. And what we mean by that is what the I am presence is presence itself. It's not who I am as a person is presence. It's not trying to fathom with the mind, well, how do I know that I am the presence? It's not happening there. The recognition is not happening in the mind. The recognition is happening in consciousness itself as it cognizes as the true intelligence, recognizing itself. So it's actually presence recognizing its own presence. And here the sense is, oh, this is what I am. This is the truth of who I am. I'm not a limited individual person. I'm not a story. I'm not a mind. I'm not something or someone in time and space. I am as presence, and the timeless, eternal, boundless now. I'm everywhere, and you maybe start to feel a sense of an expansion into the fullness of yourself. And this is what we might speak of as a resonant remembrance. It's not a mental memory remembrance. It's a resonant remembrance where there's a recognizing, a cognition in the intelligence of consciousness that recognizes what has always been so. You have always been so. You have always been here, now, in and as the fullness of yourself. And as we open to the field of presence, we recall in the frequency field that here in this field of presence, the transmission field of presence, that this presence field is shared by all. So we join in the one heart, the one unified field. And as we join here in the one, the community of one heart, oneself, we also join with the presence of God and glory in the discovery of what God and glory truly is. And that when we drop into this presence, this still, silent, pristine presence, we join with God, we join with the glory of all that is. If we're in a mental, conceptual idea of embodiment, all that we will be embodying are ideas and concepts of the mind. And that will never bring us to a sense of freedom. We're here to embody this transcendent reality. The transcendent reality is just pointing to the full, complete reality that is so much vaster than the mind's idea of reality. So the transcendent is speaking to the field of awake awareness. The transcendent is speaking to that which is beyond the mind. So of course we have to open to the transcendent in order to be free of the mind, to be free of identification with body-mind as a limited being, as a limited someone. We're here to embody the whole, right? We're here to know the vast and glorious reality of who we are and to live this right here now as a human in the center of life and the play of the world. So to embody this is to open to it and then to be in the play of life, and through the play of life embody this living reality. And in a way we could say that's really what the human life experience is all about. It's about how do we live this vast, transcendent, glorious wholeness? How do we bring this vast, infinite, unbounded light, this frequency of love and the full technology of an unconditional, perfect, spotless love? How do we bring this to the surface of life? And of course the answer is that we don't do anything. we allow the intelligence to live itself, the intelligence of life to live itself. So we could say we just get out of the way and we let what knows do what it knows how to do, right? Or what is that knows how to be and flow. We just be one with that knows how to be and flow as life. So in this moment, just notice what is happening in your field, in your heart, in your cells, in the fibers of your being, in your field. Receiving the infusion of silence, of deep wisdom light into every fiber and cell of your being, and allowing the activation, like a light initiation, in your field where all that you are, the glory that you are, the beautiful, perfect child of God that you are, just comes alive, comes online, and is activated as a living frequency, possibility of a way of living that is ever fresh. Living as one heart with all of our brothers and sisters of the world. Living as one heart with everything that is in manifest appearance. Living as one essence. Living together as a community of one heart. And really, in a way, this sense of the community of one is a beautiful clue to embodiment, that we live in the seeming diversity as unique flowers in God's garden, and yet we are all being nourished and blossoming out of the fertile ground and through the intelligence of just how we are wired. Like is a flower trying to organize its flowering? Is a flower trying to change its color, give itself an extra stamen, right? Is a flower trying to have more petals? I'd like 9 petals, not 5. I want to be a 4-petal flower, not a 7-petal flower, right? We are uniquely wired. It's already done, that wiring. And we're not here to change that wiring. We're actually here to live the true wiring and stop fighting it. Stop trying to resist it. Stop trying to be different. So we let go of comparison and competition, because what's the point? I want to be a white flower. I want to be a white flower. I don't want to be an orange flower. But you know, we find that when you actually be the orange flower, you start feeling more yourself than you've ever felt, and you start discovering the freedom and the connection to source. And being resourced from source, you have fresh, fertile nourishment of the divine constantly, let's say 24/7 in the time zone of the human plane. It's eternal, it's timeless, it's forever, forever, darling, right? It's forever. It's always yours. And it's about what are you saying yes to, right? Can seem like, wow, this journey's so hard. I keep trying, I keep doing all that I'm supposed to do, and it's just so elusive. It's so challenging. But here's the thing, right? This is important. What are you really saying yes to? There can be this deep sense that says, well, I'm saying yes to God, I'm saying yes to God, I'm saying yes to God. And yet there's something known as prajnaparadha, which is like going against the wisdom. Sometimes it gets translated as a crime against the wisdom, right? So we just use that because it like gives a little bit of a, oh, you know, it's impact. It gives a little bit of an impact of like, wow, crime, that's serious. But the crime against the wisdom, going against the wisdom, is that we actually can feel like we're saying yes to God. And of course, we can be saying yes to God. We could be saying 90% yes to God, but 10% is saying yes to limitation. 20%, right? It's not about measuring in time and space, but it's recognizing that honestly, if we are saying 100% yes to God and glory in every moment, the ever-present omnipotence of God and glory is ever available and unmoving. Of course, if we are saying yes to it, we are resting in it. Absolutely, no question, right? Just allow this to land in your system as intelligence, because it's really, really important and magical. Now, if we are saying yes to the prajnaparadha, the crimes against wisdom, right? We're going against the knowing of our heart, and we're just like, oh, just a little bite of this, and a little bite of that, and a little bite of this, and a little bit of that, and oh, it's okay, because my heart's really, really longing for God. But ultimately, we're hooked, attached, and moving in concept, idea, and belief. Then we're actually saying yes to concept, idea, and belief, right? And if we're saying yes to concept, idea, and belief, then we're not actually 100% saying yes to the wisdom, right? So this isn't an illustration that wants to bring any kind of sense of, oh no, I'm doing it wrong, or I'm bad, or wow, you know, that's terrible. It's just to illustrate, and if anything, to bring a wow, an awe of like, okay, just to have awareness. And, you know, some of the more traditional teachings, transmissions, would say you have to root out and get rid of those attachments of the mind, the beliefs, the ideas, the concepts. Root them out and reject them. But I would invite, root them out and include them. Include them as frequency. Because if we're holding any kind of posture of trying to get away from, it's like if we have something that we're addicted to and we try to cut ourselves right off from it, we're more likely to be pulled into a heavier dose of that, right? Because to cut off is to divide, and the frequency of love is about including. So it's not about feeding the habits, the concepts, the beliefs. It's about rooting it out, shining the light. And as we shine the light, the technology of love includes everything and reveals that the frequency essence of everything is actually the same. So it's not to say, what am I doing wrong? And resting in a frequency of making myself wrong. This can be one of the misinterpretations. And then, oh, I've got to transcend to get away from everything that's wrong with me, everything that's bad about me, right? Can you feel how that's rooted in the idea of there being a sinner, that you're never going to get there, being deficient, being lacking? That itself is the frequency of separation, division, limitation. What we're really opening to is a frequency that, by rooting it out and rejecting it, that might have been spoken in the more traditional ways of expressing, is really about not kowtowing to, not giving your identity to ideas, beliefs, and concepts, but seeing, when I identify there, I leave myself, I abandon myself. And we could say, what are we saying 100% yes to? Is it to God and glory, to the Divine Mother, to love, to freedom? But ultimately, you're saying 100% yes to your whole self. This is about yourself, your whole self, and saying yes to yourself in the fullest way. There's nothing outside of you. And that's where we discover, in the belonging to God, you discover that you belong to God, that your wholeness is in God, in the glory, in the divine. Your wholeness is in love. And that everything about this lived experience is about joining in that and discovering through the embodiment of what we open to as the transcendent field, as the field of presence, what we open to as peace, as sanctuary, as refuge. It's to take refuge in the true nature, to know this without question. But the embodiment is how to live this. How to live this and let this light into every single area of your life. And so how we let that light in, how do we let that love permeate and infuse every area of the life, is by not rejecting any part of ourselves, but including all that we are at the level of frequency, loving every single part of us, recognizing that our habits and our conditionings, even what we might call addictions, they're just different. They're just conditionings, really, no different. All of these beliefs, ideas, concepts, habits, conditionings, they're protections. They're ways that we've learned to be that kept us safe at some time in our life and that became habitual. They nourished us. They fed us in some way where we felt like divine nourishment was not fully available. These kind of habits, these ways of being, they nourished us, they've nourished us. And yet, as we want to open to the fullness of our own wholeness and say yes, we discover that some of these habits are like glass ceilings. They're keeping us bound and limited. And so that even though we're saying yes to truth, that there's these places that are not saying yes to truth, not saying yes to the fullness of ourself. And it's not to make a problem out of that. And this is so, so very important, that we don't make it wrong. We don't make it in any way a landscape of dividing or separating or judging or criticizing ourselves. Because only in the presence of love will everything, every fiber of our being truly surrender. So it's about following the longing of our heart, whether it's a 50%, a 70%, a 90%, it doesn't actually matter. It's about recognizing, okay, this part of me is longing, and there are parts of me that are doing their own thing, quite frankly, and saying yes, and saying yes to the old paradigm, saying yes to limitation. And I see those parts of me, and as I see them, instead of making them wrong and creating a to-do list and a plan that tomorrow, right? Tomorrow is the day where it's all going to change, right? I'm going to go crazy for all of those things. And then tomorrow, I'm going to do it all different. But what if now, right now, in the presence of presence that you are, in the intelligence that you are, you just open to be the light that illuminates everything that's in your landscape. The parts of you that are absolutely on their knees, head to the floor in devotion to life and wholeness, and the parts that are in devotion to protection and feeling safe in a different way. What if there's just an opening in this moment to just illuminate? And even maybe just see, you might even just get some sparks of insight and illumination of, okay, well, that's a glass ceiling, that's a protection. That part definitely isn't saying yes. But what we find is that in the innermost being, the innermost essence of everything, there's a great glorious yes. There's already a knowing. Love is already present, right? Because the essence nature of everything is the same one. So in a way, it's that already the whole field is actually in devotion to itself. The whole field of life is actually in surrender to itself. The whole field, the essence of the whole field is one living reality of one substance, one love, one glory, one light. And so what if true surrender is to surrender to actually accept and receive all that you are, just as you are, and see yourself in the light, in the way that love sees. Love sees only love. Love doesn't see a problem. Love doesn't see something that needs to be changed or fixed. Love sees only love. Love sees at the essence level, not at the story level. And so as you rest in love, as you rest in this field of presence, in the love of God, in the glory, you start to shift perspective to be able to see all that you are in the light of love. You start to see all of yourself from a different perspective, a perspective that isn't judging yourself, isn't making yourself wrong, isn't trying to work out, well, what part of me is good and what part of me is bad, and how can I bring that bad part of me into alignment, right? That's the fix it, change it way of the paradigm of limitation. What we're speaking of as a living reality is that way of being will never bring us to wholeness, because there's always one that is overseeing. Like it's where there's like a policeman, a spiritual policeman that's always overseeing, looking for you're the part that's wrong, you're the problem here, you are the problem here. Okay, let's work on this problem, right? But will that policeman ever give itself up? No, that's the mind, right? That's the mind. The mind is like that spiritual policeman that's just absolutely committed to its own protection and is there being like an authority, trying to root out all the problems, making them wrong, trying to work out strategies for improvement and bringing everyone into alignment. But then you find that the policeman has got everything into alignment except themselves, right? And so what's going to happen to the policeman, right? How are we going to get rid of the authority figure that thinks that this one knows? How are we going to surrender that authority, right? This is an illustration of how we've come to believe that like an autonomy or an inner self-reliance, like a deep independence is a kind of sovereignty. But we can't have sovereignty while there's someone that thinks they are sovereign or even wants to be sovereign, right? The sovereign being is being one with the one, that there's only one sovereign. The sovereign being is the oneness. It's the surrendered heart. It's the one field, and it's living at the frequency of the one. The sovereign that feels like I am the sovereign of my life. I don't need anything else. I am the sovereign. We have to be really aware of that sovereign being the mind dressed up as a sovereign being and in an identity, and not actually being able to free themselves of that deep protection. And so that's why what we're speaking of an absolute inclusivity is an inclusivity where the melting into sovereignty, the true sovereign being, is a melting into the field of presence, the field of silence. And we could say the transcendent field, it's melting into the transcendent field. We're melting into God and glory. We're melting into the divine. We're melting into what we truly belong to. We're melting into our own true essence, nature. And we discover that in the silence, in the stillness. The absolute most potent thing ever, ever in the infinite reality is silence. The transmission of silence. The transmission of silence is the true field of initiation. Because in the true field of initiation, there's no one initiating. This is the only way that there can be a complete disappearance of boundaries and division, and a realization of the one in your own heart. A joining. A joining is a joining in the light. And so there's no identity. There's just a radiance, right? There's no identity. There's not a someone. There's just a radiance, a glow, a shining that's in your eyes, that's in your heart, that's in your aura. And it's a radiance that is true joy. It's a depth of presence and stillness, a depth of holding. It's not rooted in ideas or concepts or beliefs. It's a joining in the field of one, where the great discovery of the true essence nature is yours to discover absolutely. And it's unmistakable, unquestionable in its revelation. One that has discovered this is a vehicle for the expression of this as a transmission field. But that one doesn't want anything for anyone else. That one doesn't wish for it for anyone else. That one is just focused upon the one, right? Of course. How could it be any other way? That one is just focused upon the living evolutionary edge and living the resonant frequencies and allowing the constant upgrading that happens in the transmission field in connection to the divine nourishment. So here what we discover is that when we are nourished by the divine with an eternal source of resources, that we don't need to fight over resources, we don't find scarcity and lack, that we're in a recognition of divine nourishment, true nourishment. And so naturally the conditionings and the habits and the protections start to fall away. It's a beautiful thing to be able to take an inventory and to illuminate and see. Because as we illuminate and see and reveal within our own inner dynamics, there's revelation, right? The revelation that happens is revealing of the light, is revealing the places of limitation so that they can be loved into their own revealing. And so then the embodiment, the living embodiment, is just living the life at the frequency of the wide open, expansive, transcendent knowing, and yet not trying to get away from anything in life, but actually facing everything in life so fully, so profoundly, because you are the light that illuminates, you are the love that includes, you are the field that blesses and welcomes. You are the field of grace that knows only itself. And so the embodiment is a living integration where the wisdom, intelligence uses life as a way of consciousness, consciously opening to the fullness of itself at every single point in the infinite field. And we are those points. We are those points of consciousness, upgrading, recalibrating, reorienting, and opening to the fullness of our own unique flowering. Our unique flowering can only actually happen out of the soil of the unified field. The fertile, rich, resourced soil of the unified field is where we are resourced from source, where we are divinely nourished. And when we are in this frequency of divine nourishment, everything in the field that needs to reorganize itself. And then this whole idea of making a crime against the wisdom itself dissolves, right? It dissolves. There can be no crime. There is no sinner. Nothing can be wrong. Everything is included. We dissolve the whole landscape of division into a field of inclusivity. This is love's open secret. Everything is included. And of course, here we find our true purpose. Our true dharma naturally starts to flow. We discover that the purpose is to open to the light and to embody the light, and that we don't need to know how. It's not a doing, but we're here to flower uniquely. And in a way, it's a relaxation to allow that flowering to happen. There's so much information out there, so much telling us how we should be, what we need to fit into, what we need to subscribe to, all of these ideas, how we need to be, what we need to have. So much investment in technology, in the play of the world, so much investment in how to remain disempowered, divided, and limited. How to remain divided from God and glory. How to remain divided from true nature. Right? When we recognize in the true technology of our own intelligence what this life is all about, then we realize that why would I try to fit into a world that is divided, corrupt, discordant? Why would I not be a pioneer of heart? Why would I not be a pioneer at the level of frequency and light and love, and embody and be a way shower, be the light, be a beacon, be a living invitation, be a living field of blessing that is inviting actually everything that is discordant to come to its true nature through me living my true nature, the one true nature. What if everything that I'm being invited into is about opening to new ways and being innovative in ways that haven't come forward before, opening to inspiration and innovation, and that inspiration and innovation is not about ideas that have come before. It's about ideas that are rooted in the reality and the frequency of love, right? And joining in this frequency of love and inspiration, where there's no one that wants to be seen, no one that wants to be the leader. It's this true collaboration that we've spoken of, that the only way that true collaboration can happen is forehead to the floor, head to the ground, at the feet of the glory. True collaboration cannot happen through ideas and concepts. It cannot happen where somebody wants to be seen, be validated, be known. It cannot happen where there's unconscious patterning in the field. And so true collaboration happens where the head is to the floor, where we're aligning with nature. We're letting nature lead us. We're letting true nature lead us, right? Where we actually surrender into a recognition that we don't actually know how, that the ways that we've been trying haven't actually worked. They've actually led us to a play of the world that looks pretty kind of crazy right now, right? We want to get out of that craziness, so we keep investing. We keep saying yes to limitation, fearful that, well, what if I leave? What if I don't fit in? What if you actually discover the freedom of your heart and the love that you are? What if you actually are here for a purpose that is so far beyond what the world has made space for right now? What if you're here to lead as love? What if you're here to lead as light and live as a beacon of light, and that what you're here for hasn't got a template already carved out in the play of the world? So if you're trying to fit into the template of the play of the world, trying to find your place in a dysfunctional situation, what if what you're here for is to live and be a pioneer of reality? What if you're here to be the change, right? What if you're here to be the change, right? Sometimes when we hear about being the change, we can be like, oh yeah, but we'll let the young ones do that. I'm up here, I'm kind of in the later years of my life, but actually this is where this is what the young ones are waiting for. The young ones are waiting for the seeming elders to actually be the change, and to actually be a frequency that where they can actually not dim and dull themselves down, because these young ones are born and they come in with a consciousness that's so bright, and yet they're by the older generations they're being dulled down, and they're trying to fit in. I mean, they're kind of trying to find their ways, but they actually need for the elders to actually start being themselves, living at the frequency of love, of glory, and really embodying. And so then allowing the inspiration and innovation of these young ones, the consciousness of these young ones, to actually come alive. And it's not about doing anything with them, for them necessarily. It's about living the truth of your own heart, right?